Xi Jinping Kowtows in Plea to Biden as CCP crisis deepens? Zhongzhi Group declares bankruptcy with debts surpassing $400 billion, assets insufficient to cover liabilities. Surprise deal, airfares plummet to as low as $1.26 for Zhejiang to South Korea flights. One gate, 10 security personnel, diverse opinions on the reasons behind Beijing's subway losses. China now collecting debt from poorest countries amid financial distress. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Xi Jinping Kowtows in Plea to Biden as CCP crisis deepens? Strategic analyst and historian Gregory R. Copley unveiled startling revelations on November 21 in his latest article on oilprice.com. According to reports, during Xi Jinping's visit to San Francisco from November 13 to 17, he requested $900 billion in aid from Biden for the Chinese economy. The article underscores that leaked information originates from within the Chinese Communist Party. The article emphasizes that Xi Jinping is now acutely aware that he is facing the end of his rule and is turning to Joe Biden for salvation. Specific reports driving Xi Jinping to kowtow to Biden during the APEC summit are emerging. Copley noted that at least 2 weeks before the summit, Beijing initiated a charm offensive directed at the United States. Prior to this, Beijing had been ambiguous about whether the summit would take place. However, the commencement of the charm offensive is a significant indicator of Xi Jinping's desperation and his increasingly erratic behavior. Despite the severe economic crisis gripping China since at least 2015, Xi Jinping has undertaken almost no measures to curb or rectify it. Almost concurrently with the charm offensive against the United States, the Xi Jinping government cautiously began to reverse its anti-private sector policies and vaguely pledged support for China's private enterprises. Over the past decade, China has pursued exclusionary Maoist policies, suppressing private enterprises and attempting to subjugate the economy under the dominance of state-owned enterprises. As mentioned earlier, Xi Jinping formally requested an urgent $900 billion aid package from Biden for the Chinese economy during the APEC summit. While this specific detail cannot be confirmed, it aligns with sudden and urgent actions aimed at preventing Beijing's aggressive stance towards the United States, asserting that the two countries can be friends and partners. Copley suggests that without an injection of nearly $1 trillion, China's real estate market and other sectors are on the verge of complete collapse. Even with such an investment, the mainland real estate market and the overall economy of China may continue to decline. Furthermore, the scale of private sector bankruptcies and the interruption and closure of so many factories cannot be reversed overnight, and foreign trust in the PRC cannot be rebuilt overnight. Copley asked, would such a bailout save Xi? Perhaps not, but it would perhaps be the only opportunity open to him. At the end of the article, Copley said that his source from the CCP did not indicate whether Xi Jinping had received a response from President Biden to the blunt and desperate request. There was no evidence that Mr. Biden had received any advance warning of the request, but there were certainly expressions of concern when Beijing had, before the summit, embarked on the charm offensive. That there is no substance to the charm offensive, however, was demonstrated by the continued antagonism toward the U.S. and its allies in their actual practices on the military lines of confrontation. Zhongzhi Group declares bankruptcy with debts surpassing $400 billion, assets insufficient to cover liabilities. China's largest fund management company, Zhongzhi Group, has publicly addressed investors for the first time since the default incident. The group candidly admitted to facing insurmountable debts, with the total principal and interest of related liabilities soaring to a staggering 460 billion Chinese yuan, approximately $64.38 billion US dollars. In more detail, on November 22, Zhongzhi Group issued a letter of apology to investors, detailing that on December 18, 2021, Mr. Xie Zhikuan, the actual controller of Zhongzhi Group, passed away suddenly. Following this, several executives and key personnel departed, and the group, along with its affiliated companies, became heavily reliant on decisions made by the original controller, resulting in an ineffective internal management state. Zhongzhi Group stated that, due to the colossal debt scale, excluding the margin, the total principal and interest of related liabilities are estimated to be between 420 billion and 460 billion yuan, approximately $17.34 billion to $64.38 billion US dollars. The letter of apology also revealed that the group's outstanding debt is approximately 220 billion to 260 billion yuan, approximately 30.8 billion to 36.4 billion US dollars. Against the backdrop of the gradual adjustment of real estate policies by the Chinese authorities, the real estate industry faced restrictions on bank loans, while companies under the Zhongzhi group, such as Zhongrong Trust, became new funding channels for the real estate sector. Among its significant deals, statistics show that from 2014 to 2016, within 2 years, Zhongrong Trust, under the Zhongzhi Group, issued over 10 trust products to Evergrande, providing financial support. In addition, companies like China Fortune Land Development, Kaisa, Sunac, Sunshine City, Blu-ray Real Estate, Tahoe, and Shermao are also in collaboration with Zhongrong Trust. In recent years, the sluggish performance of the Chinese real estate market has not only led to a decline in returns for the Zhongzhi Group but has also posed liquidity challenges. In August of this year, four major wealth management companies under the Zhongzhi Group postponed their redemptions. Subsequently, several listed companies disclosed risk warning announcements, having been exposed to overdue products from Zhongrong Trust. Additionally, individual investors have been unable to redeem their investments. On September 15, Zhongrong Trust announced that the company was placed under the supervision of CCP Trust and CITIC Trust, two central enterprises of the Communist Party of China. It is worth noting that there have been instances where trust companies were placed under the supervision of China Trust before and were later declared bankrupt by the court. Surprise deal: airfares plummet to as low as $1.26 for Zhejiang to South Korea flights. Several Chinese airlines are currently grappling with challenges, marked by significant reductions in airfares, some as low as 9 yuan, approximately $1.26, signaling a return to cabbage prices for air travel. In more detail, a report from Upstream News on November 21 reveals that as the tourism market enters the off-season, overall ticket prices have experienced a notable decline, sparking an undercover price war among airlines. Despite the gradual recovery of international and regional flights, many airlines are still operating at a loss. In a recent promotional campaign, Spring Airlines introduced several outbound tickets priced at the cabbage rate of 9 yuan, covering routes such as Ningbo to Jeju Island and Shanghai to Seoul. However, these promotional fares were valid only on specific dates. For instance, the 9 yuan bare ticket price for the Zhejiang to Seoul flight on January 27 incurred additional charges, including 475 yuan in taxes, covering airport and fuel surcharges, and a 40 yuan fee for upgrading to 40 kilograms of checked baggage. This resulted in a total one-way ticket cost of 524 yuan, approximately $73.36. In addition to the 9 yuan tickets, there are also low-cost international and domestic tickets priced at 59 yuan, 99 yuan, 110 yuan, and 200 yuan. However, these fares come with restrictions on specific dates and additional charges for taxes and baggage allowances. Currently, China's international flights, which have been severely impacted by China's epidemic policies, are still in the process of recovery. It is anticipated that China's international flight volume will recover to 70% of the 2019 levels during the upcoming winter and spring aviation season. During Shanghai's zero-COVID lockdown last year, netizens humorously used airplane ticket cabbage prices to satirize the stringent lockdown measures that made it challenging for ordinary people to move around, and airplane tickets were forced to drop to cabbage prices with no takers. The current airplane ticket cabbage prices reflect the further deterioration of the Chinese economy, the mass exodus of foreign businesses, widespread youth unemployment, and issues such as salary reductions for public servants and teachers in various places, highlighting the hardships faced by many people. 1 Gate, 10 security personnel, diverse opinions on the reasons behind Beijing subway losses. In recent discussions, the Beijing subway has become a focal point of interest, capturing attention with reports of financial setbacks. This has sparked a diverse range of opinions on the underlying causes contributing to these losses. Digging deeper, the three entities overseeing Beijing's subway operations, Beijing Metro Operation Company, Limited, Beijing Rail Transit Operation Management Company, Limited, and Beijing Jingang Subway Company, Limited, have recently divulged their 2022 corporate cost data. The first two are entities controlled by Beijing Infrastructure Investment Corp. A meticulous examination of various operating costs reveals that Beijing Metro Company, managing 17 lines, incurred a total operating cost of 12.365 billion yuan last year. Labor costs constituted the largest share at 49%, totaling 6.059 billion yuan. However, security fees reached 1.3 billion yuan, equivalent to the annual electricity bill, comprising 11% of the total cost. The predicament of severe financial losses is not unique to the Beijing subway. According to statistics from the WeChat public account Times Weekly, among the 32 city subway companies that have disclosed their performance, 27 faced losses, accumulating to a total of 91.4 billion yuan, approximately $12.79 billion US. These subway losses have sparked discussions among netizens. Apart from expressing concerns that, amid economic downturns and local fiscal crises, subsidies for subways may become unsustainable, potentially resulting in increased subway fares, many netizens notably criticized the subway for employing an excessive number of security personnel, contributing to the escalation of operational costs. One user remarked, shifting work at the 4 turnstiles requires a total of about 40 to 50 security personnel, and for interchange stations with 7 to 8 turnstiles, the number goes up to hundreds. Isn't that costly? Another pointed out, 6 or 7 is considered few. There's a security gate with over 10 people, 4 on each side inside and outside the gate, some standing idly without conducting checks. There are also a few standing by the conveyor belt, in addition to those watching the computer. It's strange if they're not running a deficit. An individual even listed the names of cities that will likely face financial bankruptcy, unable to sustain the substantial operational subsidies for the subway, and consequently may have to shut down subway lines. Commentator Li Fadian also conveyed to Radio Free Asia that the substantial security expenses are the primary cause of the notable increase in subway company costs. Moreover, he remarked, Chinese people are already under such strict control and surveillance. I don't know what they are afraid of. Just think about it, one security checkpoint alone has at least 6 machines, which may often need maintenance. There are multiple checkpoints at one station, and how many stations does Beijing's subway have? So, this cost is quite enormous. In the context of economic decline and severe fiscal deficits, this massive financial expenditure might be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. However, what remains perplexing is that despite the considerable losses in the subway, some local governments in China continue to announce new rounds of subway construction. China now collecting debt from poorest countries amid financial distress. Beginning in 2001 and including the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, that started in 2013, China has invested in nearly 21,000 projects across 165 low- and middle-income countries. The total outstanding debt owed to China is roughly $1.1 trillion, and over half of these loans are now due, a proportion that will reach 75% by 2030. Initially, these projects were expected to drive GDP growth in borrower nations, with increased economic output enabling them to repay their loans. However, numerous projects have fallen short of completion or failed to generate the projected returns. A notable case in point is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, long touted as the crown jewel of the BRI, also known as One Belt, One Road. After a decade and expenditure of $25 billion, the CPEC has yet to deliver on its promises of developing Pakistan's energy infrastructure and overhauling and connecting Gwadar Port with Kashgar in China's Xinjiang region. The CPEC would effectively make China both the owner and operator of the port while affording China cheaper trade routes and providing it access to the Arabian Sea. Any real gains to Pakistan have been offset by problems of financing and security, as well as backlash from Pakistanis who increasingly see China as the beneficiary of a project that puts Pakistan deeper in debt while bringing little benefit to locals. Economists have confirmed that the spillover effect of spending on constructing CPEC infrastructure has been negligible, while the impact on Pakistan's debt has been tremendous. As of July, Pakistan owes 30% of its external debt to Chinese government and commercial banks. To make matters worse, the rupee has deteriorated in value, losing 40% against the dollar, thus making debt service payments even more painful. Economic instability during the initial phases of the project has led to delays in project completion, meaning delays in the generation of revenues intended to be used to service the debt. To the chagrin of many Pakistanis, the next phase of the CPEC is about to begin. With it, more debt rollovers and additional loans will be added to the existing debt. Stories of risky loans and a shift of focus. Similar stories can be heard among other BRI nations. A full 80% of Chinese loans to the developing world are to countries facing financial distress. This is why the West has accused China of being an irresponsible lender. The problem is exacerbated by high interest rates and falling local currencies. In its initial phases, the BRI was synonymous with substantial loans aimed at financing extensive infrastructure endeavors. However, this paradigm has shifted, with Beijing increasingly extending rescue loans rather than solely focusing on colossal infrastructure projects. As China undergoes this transition, many of these rescue loans are being facilitated through collaboration with more conventional financial institutions. About half of China's non-emergency loans are made in cooperation with syndicates, and 80% of those are with Western commercial banks, for example, Standard Chartered or BNP Paribas, or with multilateral development banks such as the United States International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD. Despite this shift of focus, China is still the world's foremost source of development finance, outspending any single group of G7 country, as well as multilateral lenders. However, it is important to note that the G7 member nations collectively began outspending China in 2021 as they worked to create an alternative to Beijing-led initiatives. China managing the risks. At the BRI summit in October, CCP leader Xi Jinping made it clear that China was reducing its investment risk, focusing on high-quality investments. She promised $100 billion in new investment, but it appears that most of this money is going into rescue loans, saving old projects rather than starting new ones. The other operational change, which Beijing is less inclined to publicize, is that it is now acting as a debt collector. In many instances, Beijing quietly seizes delinquent borrowers' foreign currency reserves held as collateral in escrow accounts. Data, a research lab at William and Mary's Global Research Institute that tracks China's lending, posits that Beijing is currently focusing on rescuing troubled projects and distressed borrowers to prevent public backlash and win a diplomatic victory against its G7 competitors. China is now managing three kinds of risk: repayment risk, environmental, social, and governance, ESG, risk, and reputational risk. As the world polarizes over such issues as the Russia-Ukraine war or the Israel-Hamas conflict, the Chinese regime is losing diplomatic ground. According to Data's assessment, Beijing has had more setbacks than achievements in its soft power struggle against Washington. The BRI had a 56% favorable rating in 2019 versus 40% in 2021. According to a recent Pew research, most countries already have a more favorable view of the United States than China, and the gap is widening. The United States has historically refused to try and outspend China in garnering global influence. On average, China has invested $80 billion annually in developing countries, whereas the United States averages only $60 billion. The United States is now stepping up its overseas spending, with the United States International Development Finance Corporation seeing a 15-fold increase in overseas activities. Additionally, the European Union, G7, and other developed nations are beginning to promote Western-led alternatives to the BRI, such as the Global Gateway Project and the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. If you find the information helpful, please share this video with a friend to watch together. This will be a great source of motivation for our team to produce more and more quality and reliable videos. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths. Thank you for tuning in.